So that's how I applied to Apple. And if I want to continue more on that, so my first round, it went okay. I was almost able to solve the question and answer all the questions of the interviewer. I
Okay.
somehow I passed that
What
interview.
was the
And
first round all about? Like, was it?
so the first round, the interview asked me some questions about me, my projects, and what I've been working on recently.
Welcome to the podcast, Rudrank. Welcome to the Mayank show.
Hi, Mayank. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Pleasure having you today. So, Rudrank, we have heard a lot about you, right? You have been an iOS engineer purely, and then you have won WWDC Scholarship as well. You have interned with Apple. Now you're currently working with a company as a DevRel. So, tell me more about you. Like I've already taken these fancy names, WWDC Scholarship, internship with Apple, and all of those things. But would you like go ahead and expand on this and tell us more about you?
Okay, so thanks for having me, Mayank. My name is Rudrank, and I am currently working as the developer relations engineer for Codemagic, which is a mobile CI/CD company. And I'm helping and advocating the product to the iOS community. So if I go back and talk about my journey, it started back in 2017 when I got into
Okay.
college. And back then I wanted, so it actually starts in 2013 when I wanted a MacBook, which was like an 11-inch MacBook, but I couldn't
Okay.
get it back then. But during college, I got a MacBook Air, a 13-inch MacBook, and I was really proud of it, and it was really cool to have that. But my classmates and everyone was like, you cannot play games on it, because when you are in college, the first thing that you want to
Right.
do is play
Play
Counter
games.
Strike with your
Right.
friends. So I wanted to do something on this machine that the Windows machine or the Linux machine could not. And that's how I explored what I can do with it with macOS. And I stumbled upon Xcode and eventually iOS development. So by the end of 2017, I started with a course which is very popular and infamous, called as CS193P by Stanford University. It's a free course, and I started. The course was based on iOS 11 back then, and when I started with it, I found it very difficult because I had no prior experience with Swift language or anything related to that. So I gave up after making a half-baked calculator app.
Okay.
Then, then in the beginning of 2018, there was this popular culture on Google Summer of Code, which is a summer program where you work with a open source organization and Google pays you a stipend for it. You work for 3 months on a project. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone was participating for it. So I thought, why let me try, let me have a shot at it as well. So during so I started with the course by Angela Yu. That's, I think, one of the best courses out there if you are a beginner to start with iOS development. And she made it very easy to start with the Swift language and iOS development itself when you are working with very basic apps like Get Rich Get Poor. It's an app where you
Okay.
create an app for, it's just a clone of an app which was sold for $999.
Okay.
So from that app, I binged all the videos, got a grasp of iOS development. Then I tried my hands on one of the Google Summer of Code open source projects, but then I was too naive to understand how a big project works, because at one point I had just created an app that had like 2 or 3 screens, and then I am
Okay.
dealing with an app which is like multiple screens. My MacBook Air could not just build that project without roaring. The fans were going haywire.
Can understand. Yeah.
So in my first attempt, I got rejected, and I thought, okay, maybe iOS development is not for me, and I gave up on that, and I got back into my normal college courses. I was in second year by this time,
Okay.
and like I just focus on the college courses and trying to be one of the toppers of my batch. And eventually, I that semester went great when I was focusing a lot on the curriculum that we had in college. But by the end of October 2018, one of the my seniors reached out that they wanted an iOS app from scratch for the
Mm-hmm.
Android counterpart. They had two apps that they made for Android and they were successful on the Play Store, and they wanted two apps for iOS. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, I have nothing to lose, and I wanted new headphones. I am still using those headphones,
Wow. Yeah.
so I wanted those new headphones, and I thought that the stipend will be sufficient for that. So, and in it, because I'm getting paid to learn as well as have an experience of developing an app from the scratch. Because
Yeah.
when you are working at a startup and you are the only intern there, you are kind of the lead iOS developer as well.
Wow. How does that go? Like, how did you go about that?
So when I started out, I focused very much on programmatic UI, because
Okay.
when I started iOS development, I wasn't much comfortable with storyboards. So I started the watching videos by Let's Build That App,
Okay.
and they're like there's a
Brian
whole
Boone.
course exactly. Like there are so many videos on programmatic UI, so I learned from watching the videos. uh, the app was mostly a tab view, a few collections for you here and there, and somehow I just copied code from one part and just made an app somehow that looked like an app.
Okay.
And then the thing was that on one hand the code was looking very mm, what do you say, very professional, but on the other
Okay.
hand I had no idea about generics. So even if there
Okay.
were like few screens that were similar, I was copy pasting the whole view controller code for those. And if I had some problem in one of the screens, I would go and update it in all the 3 and 4 view controllers.
All
So
right.
but the end user does not see that,
Right.
they see the
Only
app.
the yeah team knows it. Yeah.
The team is me.
Okay. The team is you here. The lead developer.
So when I finished my internship, they we published the app to the app store, and by the uh, and after that I got some confidence that okay, maybe I I can do iOS development, because this was the first time I was paid for doing iOS development while learning about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and at that time, I learned about WWDC Scholarship. I learned about WWDC in the first place, and then I saw the tickets
Okay.
price, and it was like
Okay.
$1,600. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that's just not possible for me. And if I have to include the flight ticket as well,
True.
so I got to know about a friend, a person in one of the WhatsApp groups that was a scholar, Sinchan, if
Okay.
you know, and
Um,
got it. So he was one of the scholars. So he had a talk related to WWDC scholarship. I attended that. I got very fascinated to be have the ticket for free and Apple fund your whole trip. So I applied for the scholarship, and in
okay.
March. So this is back in 2019, March of 2019. So and I was extremely lucky that we were given a deadline of 10 days, and
Mm-hmm.
it was very difficult to make the whole app in 10 days, something that's workable and showable as a demo.
Right.
But I was extremely lucky that my college midterm holidays were
Mm.
exactly during that time. So I got
Okay.
full 24 hours into 10 days of work that I could do. So I knew that I have to make the most of this opportunity. I started working on an app which was related to autism. My mother was a
Okay.
special educator back then, and she had
Oh.
problems with teaching her students on, because she was manually creating all the materials, the teaching materials for them. So I wanted
All
to
right.
create an app, a 3D app in the beginning that could automate the process, where she can just hand over the iPads to the students, and they can try to learn on their own while she can guide them.
Wow.
So initially I started, so at this point I had no idea about 2D development, not 3D development, nor AR development, not
Mm-hmm.
sprite kit.
Nothing.
Forgot the name of the 3D kit. So you know, right? It's sprite kit, something kit,
Yes.
and AR kit, right?
No, I get it. Yeah.
So I started with the introduction screen. Then I went to the learning sprite kit. I wanted to make a 2D app, and then I got too ambitious. I thought, let's make a 3D app now. Then
Okay.
there were like 5 days left. I was like, okay, it's either I learn some 3D development or I will just quit. And I somehow got it working. And then I think 3 days were left, and I thought, maybe if I have to increase my chances of getting in, I will just include ARKit as well. So I
Okay.
made the so I made the whole 3D app into an AR app.
Okay.
It was kind of difficult to follow through. So at that time, I was sleeping like 2 to 3 hours a day, and I worked like 10 to 15 hours every day because it's I I enjoyed the process of working on the app,
Right.
as well as the vision of enjoying yourself in California or something.
Ah.
So I used to watch all the YouTube videos that other scholars had posted about their
Okay.
experience, and whenever I fell down or
That used to
when
motivate you.
it used to motivate me.
Okay.
So by the end of the 10th day, there were many crashes in the app.
Okay.
Somehow I fixed them when there was like 5 hours left for the submission, and then I just
Okay.
submitted the app, and I was like, okay, I don't care if I am selected or not, but I'm very, very proud of how, for the hard work that I have put in making that app,
Right.
because that
Right.
was my biggest project, iOS project back then.
Okay.
And so this is the story of submitting the app. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, I also applied to Google Summer of Code again this year.
Okay. Okay.
So in that year, so
So we are talking
I
about 2019, right?
yes, so side by
Okay.
side I was also working on the Google Summer of Code project, and I
Okay.
took the idea of implementing a voiceover in the Rocket Chat app. Rocket Chat is like an open source Slack
Okay.
messaging app.
Okay.
So they had one of the ideas where you can implement voiceover. So for the audience, voiceover is a screen reader that helps the blind people or people uh, uh, with low visions to use their iPhone just using their hands, where the elements, this iPhone speaks out the elements to you.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so while this was a new thing for me, I knew that if I have to increase my chances of getting this Google Summer of Code project, I have to separate myself from the other participants. And the biggest way
Okay.
I could do that was start working on the project itself. Like the
Okay.
project was supposed to start from May, June, July, and I started working on the first part of the project, the proposal that I had created. I
Okay.
finished the first project in April itself after
Wow.
my WWDC scholarship submission, and my mentor was very
Okay.
proud of that, impressed by that, and
Mm-hmm.
I worked. Uh, I did more contribution to the repository of Rocket Chat, and by April I got to know that I have been selected for WWDC scholarship. My
Yeah.
mentor was also a scholar back then, so he could relate with my excitement.
Okay.
And after like 2 weeks after the announcement, I also got to know that I got selected for the Google Summer of Code. So
Wow.
so I think that was the breakthrough in my career, like a turning point where I realized that okay, I can do something in life with iOS development, because
Yeah.
Google paid a lot of stipend because it was in dollars. So because of the purchasing power parity, we were getting a lot of money as an developer in India.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
so WWDC was a fully paid trip by Apple. A few like 125 participants get the air ticket as well, because it's very expensive to go from India to San Francisco.
Yeah.
So it was a, what do you say, an experience of a lifetime. I still haven't had a better week than that one, and I still cherish
Nice.
those times. I still go back and see those photos, and I met so many people, so many amazing developers there. Made so many friends. Some friends I'm still talking to daily, and
Okay.
it was an amazing experience that I wish like any reader who is a student goes to, if
Wow.
when Apple decides that, when we are in a post-pandemic world and everything's getting better.
Hmm. Okay,
So.
so Rudrank, you have touched upon a lot of things like in
Mhm.
last few minutes, and I'm kind of accommodating a lot of thoughts on that, and what I can expand on. So the first question that came to mind when you were talking about watching a course from Stanford on iOS development, how did you start off with that? Because generally people feel obstructed when they start learning iOS development. They get a lot of things today to learn from. So what do you think is should be or can be the go-to resource to learn in anything in iOS development? Be it some video course, some blog, some other course, some book. So what kind of recommendation do you have for any new person or a beginner in the iOS development space? What should they prefer to go with?
I think now, back then I wasn't aware of hacking with Swift. I think you are aware of that as well. So
Yeah.
there's a resource called Hacking with Swift, which has a series called as 100 Days of Swift and 100 Days of Swift UI. So if I have to start iOS development from scratch in 2022, I would just go and do both the 100 days of Swift and Swift UI, because the starting 15 days are a good refresher that gives you an understanding of the Swift language, and then the next subsequent days helps you build upon that knowledge. And it's not just theory that you are learning, you are actually making a good app, a good basic app that helps you understand the foundation and build a foundation. And the biggest part of that learning is that when you are done with a project, uh, Paul gives you a few days when you are working on your own app based on what you learned. So it helps you build upon the
Hmm.
things that you learned, and then use your creativity and imagination to just explore out there. So in that
Right.
process, you Google, you go to Stack Overflow, you do everything that we are doing in our day-to-day life as an iOS developer. So that's what I would recommend.
Okay. And how about looking out for an internship? Like if somebody is actually listening to this and who's a beginner, he might have learned or maybe will learn through the resources that you have recommended. Then what should be their next step? How would they be looking out for an internship today? Though I believe that in today's like time, you can easily find an internship on any of the social media platform itself. But having said that, what do you think about that?
So my in my college, I realized that I wanted to intern at many different places so that I can get an idea of how, let's say, a big corporation works, how a startup which has recently raised a good amount of money works, and how a bootstrapped startup works. So if you want to work at a bootstrap startup, the biggest thing is that you can reach out to your seniors or alumni who have been working in startups and want some help with working on the iOS application. That's how I got my first internship. And my
Okay.
second internship was, I went to a Swift conference in Bangalore, and I met someone there, and we talked, and I told them about my WWDC scholarship and how I want GSOC, and they were like, okay, can you work for me as an iOS intern? And that's a no interview, nothing. That's how I got my second
Wow.
internship. And
Wow.
my so and when I built upon this, my third internship was someone who knew me and has seen my work on Twitter. So I'm very active
Okay.
on Twitter, and this is something I am very proud of. When I started back in 2019, that whenever I learned something new, let's say when Combine was released, I wrote an article about it and then shared it on Twitter. So I built a good audience by 2022 and 2020. So uh,
20.
I was able to share. So the people kind of knew that I can code as an iOS intern. So someone reached out to me that okay, they have a project that they want me to work on, and if I'm interested, they had a client project and they had their own project. So that's how I got my third internship, and this helped me build a good resume to apply to Apple.
Mhm. Right. So how did you
And
apply to Apple then?
so now that we have built upon, so now we are in 2020. The pandemic
Yeah.
has almost hit. Let me just. So the pandemic is almost there, but this is by the end of 2019. I saw a tweet by a director who is working in an accessibility team that they are
Okay.
hiring interns. So I just shot them a message that here's my resume, and I have worked with accessibility in the past because I worked on the voiceover project, and
Right.
just let me know. So they asked me to send them a mail, and to my surprise, after a few hours, a recruiter reached out to me and said, "Let's schedule an interview." And this was my first ever
Wow.
interview. I had no idea what an interview, how an interview works, like a technical interview works, and what lead code is. So
Okay.
and at that and at that time at that time I was giving my like end semester examination. So I
Right.
had like a week to prepare, understand what lead code is, do some questions, and give an interview itself. So that's how I applied to Apple. And if I want to continue more on that, so my first round, it went okay. I was almost able to solve the question and answer all the questions of the interviewer. I
Okay.
somehow I passed that
What
interview.
was the
And
first round all about? Like, was it?
so
Yeah.
so the first round, the interview asked me some questions about me, my projects, and what I've been working on recently. Then they directly jumped on a lead code question. It was
Okay.
a lead code medium level question related to Sudoku.
Okay.
And I almost got it during that interview. And after that interview, I got like 2 weeks to prepare for the next one. I tried my
Mm-hmm.
best to just get all the lead code mediums done, like a lot of lead code mediums done, instead
Right.
of focusing on the easy ones or the foundation ones. And that was a big
Okay.
mistake that I did. In the second interview, the interview asked me about me, my projects, and then directly jumped onto a queue based question. And I
Okay.
forgot to revise queue, so I just panicked.
So that should also be from the medium like level also.
No, it was lead code easy, but
Easy.
I
Okay.
but I
Okay.
did not focus on queue at all during those
Okay.
2 weeks. So I had just forgotten
Yeah.
how that worked. So I just panicked, and uh, it was my second interview. I had no idea what to do if you don't know the answer to the question.
Right. Right.
So I bombed that interview, and
Okay.
as expected, after a few days, I got a rejection mail. And then after that, I just applied everywhere. When I say everywhere,
Okay.
everywhere, like
Literally everywhere.
Australia, UK, US, Canada, every internship that I could find. And I
Okay.
never got what do you say, message back from them. Most of the companies did not reach out back. I
Okay.
can say it is mostly because of the work visa requirement,
All right.
because
Though it was
so,
for the internship, right? So like there should be no issues with the work visa then.
no, like
If
it
it
is
was just remote.
difficult. The company has to pay a lot to sponsor a visa. So a startup does
Right.
not, uh, from my opinion, a startup does not go on that path and try to hire from
That
that
easily.
country.
Yeah.
It's from that country itself. It's very
Yeah.
easy for big corporations, but it's difficult for smaller ones.
All right.
So that was in vain. That's when. So I saw another tweet by an engineer, but this time they were hiring for the voice control team, and they were hiring
Okay.
only engineers, not interns.
Okay. Okay.
But I still shot them a message that if they want to hire interns, just let me, I can be a good candidate. And after
Right.
3 months from that date, I got a recruiter call that they want to schedule an interview. And the interview was very different. At that time, I was also solving lead code hard questions. And
Okay.
the like I was well versed with cracking that an interview. But then
Mm-hmm.
the interviewer asked me about me, my projects, especially the one related to voiceover.
Okay.
And then they directly asked me question related to voice control.
All right.
And the whole interview revolved around voice control, nothing related to lead code or anything.
Okay.
And that's where my experience, so I did not touch upon that. But
Mm-hmm.
after WWDC, I also started going to meetups, because when you see a WWDC scholar, you become the center of attention in a local meetup.
That's true.
So in Swift Delhi, I started with sharing my experience about WWDC. Then I shared my experience on working on the voiceover project. Then I shared my experience on dynamic type. And then finally,
Right.
I was very fascinated by voice control because it was released in WWDC 19.
Mm-hmm.
So I gave a talk about control, and I learned and researched everything about voice control. And this was back
Okay.
in August 2019. But I still had the experience and the knowledge that I gained from giving that presentation. And I
Yeah.
could easily answer all the questions during that interview based
Wow.
on
That's nice.
that knowledge. So after
Right.
that interview, after 2 weeks, I thought I may be rejected. But the
Mm.
interview directly reached out to me that uh, I passed and they want to have me in their team.
Wow. Awesome.
Uh, so
So, what is it? A
that
remote opportunity, or was it like offline?
so it was supposed to be in Cupertino, the
Okay.
headquarters of Apple.
Okay.
And I was shocked as well because
Yeah.
it's very difficult to hire. Like, I have not seen Apple hire international students from India to directly interview,
That too in
to
this way,
directly
right?
in this way.
Yeah.
And so I was shocked. But then I think I did well in the interview, and I was sure that I will do it great in the internship as well. But then COVID hit, and you know what happens next. So
Yeah.
while I was filling the visa form for internship, then we were like, will the internship happen or remotely, or will it even happen? Because there were a lot of companies that were rescinding the offers
Okay.
of all the interns. So I had no
Okay.
idea, and we were like still waiting if this COVID wave will subside, and then maybe we can go to Cupertino and intern. So
Yeah.
after a few months, we realized that okay, this is not going to happen, and somehow uh, they managed to transfer my contract to Apple India. But Apple India does not have any teams related to accessibility. Only
All right.
Cupertino has.
All right.
So even though I was under Apple India, I worked with a team in Cupertino. And
Okay. So your team was sitting out there in US, but you were working from here only.
yes, so I was working with 12.5 hours time difference. And
Oh.
it was difficult because
Yeah.
I
It,
was
it
work
sounds
my
difficult also. Like
my
complete
meetings
day
were
shift.
at like 5 a.m. or 2 a.m. in the morning. Like, the first month was very difficult. I'm really
Yeah.
glad my manager realized that this is not sustainable. So what
Right.
he did was we started doing our one-on-ones in my time zone, which is like
Okay.
9 p.m. for him and 9:30 a.m. for me, which was, I
Nice.
think, nicer, very
Yeah. That's
nicer for
yeah.
him to adjust for
Convenient
me.
enough. Yeah.
And
Okay.
during that internship, so before before that experience, I have only worked on a small startup where I was the lead iOS developer, and I was writing my own shitty code. Then
Well, that's
I
funny. I was iOS intern and I was the lead iOS developer there.
and uh, then I worked with the Google Summer of Code project. It was a
Yeah.
medium organization, and it was a big project, but
Mm-hmm.
When I worked on voice control, when I opened the voice control project for the first time, I got so scared looking at all the files. It was like a million lines of files, a million lines of code. I have never ever navigated through a project
Didn't you
as big
feel
as
like at
that.
that time that I have been using these things in my projects before or when I was working, and now that I'm in the team itself, like was that a that kind of experience for you or what? Like how was it exactly?
So the project was complete Objective C.
Okay,
So, so,
now I get it.
it was a mixture of C, C++, and Objective C. So
Okay,
uh, so I did a refresher. I bought some book for learning Objective C, and to at least get a basis of understanding Objective C, at least reading
yeah,
what the code means, and
okay,
get done with the block syntax. But somehow so when you are interning at Apple, you are also assigned a person that helps you with onboarding, and who is an engineer in the team, and they
okay,
help you on board, and if you have any problem, then you can reach out to them.
okay,
So they really helped me understand the project and where should I start from. Like, that I'm during a 3 months internship, I'm not going to go through the whole code. I just need some information
that's true.
uh, on the project, and they just navigated me there and told me that you should just understand this part of the code more, instead of just getting anxious about the uh, whole and getting overwhelmed by the complexity of the project.
Right. So how long did it went? Like it was for how many months? Two, three,
So the internship initially was supposed to happen for 4 months,
four
but
months?
then
Okay.
due to the confusion if it will happen remote or not, it was cut down to 3 months.
All right. Hmm. Not really good because one, you'll have the opportunity to go there and work in the Cupertino office. Second, it was actually cut down the time period, so no problem. What do you
I think
think? Yeah, yeah, please.
I'm just glad that the internship happened, because
Yeah,
like my fellow friends had the internship rescinded, and at least I had something. Even if I was working remotely, I had something to work on during the summer, because that knowledge I gained working on such a big project, on a scale project, is something
yeah.
that you know makes you grow as a an
That's
developer.
invaluable. Exactly, I
That's
would say.
invaluable.
Right. The experience, the kind of exposure you have got in those 3 months, like I think that must be helping you till date,
Exactly.
right?
Like
If I'm not
I
wrong.
I haven't like I haven't worked on a project that big yet. So any feature or anything that I'm working on is not, you know, com- like at a point where I get overwhelmed looking at a
Yeah.
building a feature, a new feature from scratch or anything like that.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
because I so there are some non-technical skills that you learn, like if you have a big problem at hand, you first what do you say, break those into smaller pieces, then you pick one piece and work on that. And another interesting example that I want to share with the
Yeah.
audience is that when I started out with my internship project, I created a new Xcode project, and I started with a dictionary and thought of I will just fill it with all the information, and that was so naive. Then my mentor, we had a whiteboard session where we
Okay.
discussed that you we should not just directly jump into the coding part. That should come last. We should
Mm-hmm.
first analyze what is the problem that we are solving, and what all do we need, and how the whole
Right.
thing will interact, like giving an what you say an high level overview of how the
Right.
whole system will work before just
Right.
jumping into code. Like if you are creating something, so for my project I had to create a different framework that will
Okay.
interact with it. So how will you separate that framework, and what responsibility that framework has? We first listed everything down before jumping into
Okay.
code. And when the system was created, coding was the easiest part, then
Last. Okay. Easiest part.
last and the easiest
Okay.
part.
Okay. That's nice. I didn't get this part where you are figuring out the requirements and how the whole system would work. What is it called like exactly? I didn't get it.
So it's just creating a high level overview. Let's say we are working on a music app and you are
Okay.
creating four different tabs, and one is an artist page, one is a music player page. So you first design what how they will interact with each other. If you want them in a separate framework, let's say you have a different framework that is for networking,
Okay.
and you define all the methods that you are going to have in there.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just directly jumping to the code, you have an idea of how the whole project will look like in the beginning.
Okay. Okay. So there
And
must be no confusion after that point, right?
there were, obviously there were, but if you compare it to someone who just directly jumped into writing code and they had no
Yeah.
idea, they had, like, you have, there are so many ways that the code can go from there,
Okay,
if that
I'm
makes
like,
sense.
according to me, like what I got from it is like if you directly jump to the solution, then after that you realize maybe you could have done it in this way or that way, right? Whereas if you go with this solution first, where you are actually mapping out all the requirements and how you should go about it, you are already almost 90% good with the best approach that you can take to solve it.
Yes, exactly. And on top of that, you also have to make sure that the thing that you're working on is ready for the future. When I say future,
Right.
it's like when you're adding a
Scalable.
new feature, because it's scalable. Because when you're
Yeah.
working at the scale of Apple, you have to make sure that it's easy to add new features to your app without making a lot
Hmm.
of
True that.
changes, because those changes will be like hundreds of lines of code.
Wow. Awesome. So the next question is, Rudrang, that why are you not working with Apple now? Like, what went wrong?
So that's so the biggest thing was that at it was still, we were still in a uncertain phase,
Yeah.
and we were not sure that if COVID will subside or not. And the team did not want to work with so much time difference, because it's very difficult, and that company is not known for doing remote work. And also they did not have the headcount, like they did not have, uh, they could not take a intern into a full time for that year, because they had already
Okay.
done the hiring process.
Okay. So, like, I'm not just specifically talking about this incident. I'm talking
Uh-huh.
about your plans with going forward with Apple, because it's been some time, right? You had that internship back then in 2019, right? It's been almost 2-3 years now. So are you like still thinking of applying to Apple and go working there as a full-time employee, or do you have some other plans? Like, what is the mindset with that?
So my biggest thing right now is that I have gotten so comfortable with remote work that I cannot think about working in an office and commuting to an office. And the from what I understand, all the companies in the Bay Area are slowly going returning to office, and the
Yeah,
employees have to work from office.
from
And that's
office. Yeah.
something I am kind of against too.
There's some outrage as well. I read this article, I think 1 or 2 days before, with Apple employees. They are like protesting against this decision, right? So,
I think
yeah,
because people have realized how much time they save
that's
while they
true.
are not commuting, and they are still able to do the same more efficient work at home compared to office. So it's not that the productivity has decreased
True.
while they are at home. And the second thing
Hmm.
is the visa process. Like when I applied for the tourist visa, it was very exhausting. I had no idea if I would get it or not. And then this, what do you say, the H1B visa that you get when you
Yeah,
go
that's too
to,
difficult to get.
uh,
Yeah.
it's a lottery system. So
Yeah, that's fair.
even if you worked very hard, you solved like hundreds of lead code questions, you
It depends
solved
on your luck if you will get that visa or not.
exactly, like after 7 rounds of interview, you're getting an offer, and they say, okay, your luck was not that good, you're not getting the lottery. I
So I
don't
think
want to
Apple
be in that
campus is there
situation.
in like Apple offices are there in India as well. So why not start from there and maybe then uh, plan something else with that.
So the Apple offices in India, as far as I'm aware, they do not have the teams that I want to work with.
Okay.
So
Okay.
let's
So you're
say
very clear about the teams you want to join exactly, right?
uh, yes, let's say I want to work with the MusicKit team, but they only have
Okay.
offices in Cupertino and San Diego. So it doesn't make sense for me to start with Apple India.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any other reasons that you have in mind for that? Like not just this point. Any other reasons?
I, I
I like remote work. I'm also like a flag bearer of doing the remote work, enjoying life, and all of that. At the same time, like the second point that I raised regarding getting more exposure, having a broader perspective about things, I'm pro to that as well. So I mean, somehow I'm trying to make balance in between these both. But yes, whenever it comes to going to office kind of things, whenever that kind of thing comes up, I'm clear. I'm not there, right?
do you think having an hybrid kind of system will help, where you are working
No,
like, let's say, 3 days
I
a
get
week
you.
from
Like 2 3 days in office, and then I think that's again more of like offline culture only, because you'll have to move to
Mhm.
that place, right?
Ah,
For official purposes, you can say like on paper you would say, okay, I just go 2 3 days per week in the offices, but you are living in that city just because you have to go to like, the office for 2 3 days. So yeah, that's again a foundation.
got it.
So
I,
yeah, all right,
it's
moving on.
fun working from your bed.
Exactly. Like it's fun working from wherever you want. If today I want to work from Manali, I can go over there and keep
Hmm.
working. Just I'll make sure that all the connectivities things that are required for my work to happen, I will make sure that that is there. Otherwise, I'm good. In the evening, I can enjoy the mountains, and in the daytime, I can work like any other day. So, so that's the beauty of remote work, I believe. For some people, it could be like going to beaches and all of those things. So I just gave an example. Moving on
Got it.
to the
Hmm.
next question that I wanted to ask you, like we got into a loop of asking questions regarding working with Apple, offline, online, all of those. But I was thinking of asking you about WWDC in a specific, because many people like, I would like to share my experience on this. I was talking about my experience with WWDC and how I got to know about Swift student channel. I got how how I got to know about Swift student challenge, right? So I got to know about it in 2018 when I was completing my college. So it was of no use to me after that, right? So I think that there is a lack of awareness when it comes to the WDC scholarship. And would you like to expand on that first? Because I believe some part of the audience is still not aware about what this Swift student challenge is all about. So can you please go ahead and talk about that?
So I think a lot have changed over the past 4 years, and now that in this pandemic era, everything has been online, and people have been more aware about the opportunities that they can get, and that includes the student challenge as well. And
Hmm.
even though the students cannot go to WWDC and attend it offline, and the I think in terms of the rewards that they get as a winner has been kind of, let's say, less, and we can do nothing about it.
Yeah,
But still, it's a
you
great
get the
way.
recognition.
You get the recognition, you get a free year of the developer program, and you get an
Right,
exclusive jacket that only 350 people get in a year.
right.
And I think from what I see on Twitter, like, if I just, the engagement that I saw during the submission time on my Twitter feed, it was way more than what I saw back in 2020 when
Hmm.
the Swift
Right.
Student Challenge was announced.
So, like, I also used to think the same way about Devrel when I entered in this space. And when I got to know about this space, I thought that maybe, there is still some lack of awareness regarding Devrel and what this role is all about. And recently I figured that, okay, maybe, now a lot of people know about Devrel and now there is so much awareness about it. But when you go to the other side of the picture, you find that certain people who are actually active on Twitter for good have that, awareness, but still, what I was saying about the Swift student challenge, the same thing is happening with that as well. Not many people still know about Devrel. So that's why I said that, okay, if you could expand on that and tell people what Swift student challenge is all about, what you have to do, how do you have to apply, and what are the parameters that you should take care of while applying.
So I think we are recording the podcast a little late because the deadline for the challenge has already been done, I think a week or two ago.
No worries, next year will also come, and what is not going to end.
So
But yeah, for those who are passing out from the college this year, for them it's gone.
so Swift challenge is the challenge where you have to create an app, a demo app that shows your creativity and your imagination, and you have to use the iPad's playground or the Mac apps Macs the Mac's playground app, and you have to create a the demo should be it can be demoed in like less than 3 minutes to the audience, and it can be about anything, like it can be about how you can save about global warming or anything that comes to your mind. There's no parameter that they judge on. From what I've seen, that it's mostly that if you use the latest and cool technologies, there may be higher chances of you winning, but there's no correlation as such between those. So if
Okay.
I have to give an advice to the audience listening to this, then well, I have one advice: just go and give it your best shot, and make sure that you work on something that you're very passionate about, because the process matters a lot more than the destination or the result. Because when you're proud of what you have put in those week or 2 weeks of work, that should remain with you forever, in spite of if you win or not. Because if you
True.
have done that project, you have already won for in your own mind.
Awesome. Yes, please.
So after the internship, I did not get a return offer. So I was kind of expecting that. I had no plans to move there as well. So I wasn't dejected or anything. But after the internship, I worked with a startup, a good funded startup, a product based startup, because I
Okay.
wanted to have an experience of working on a product.
What's the name of this
Uh,
startup?
so it was Ultra Human.
Okay.
So I
That's quite
worked there
popular these
for
days.
yes, I worked there for 5 months. I worked. I took response, like when you're working as an intern in a startup, you take a lot of responsibility compared to when you're working at a bigger company,
True.
because you can ship product new features as an intern itself.
Yeah.
So I worked on the widgets, the watch app, the personal onboarding screen, and then after the internship, I was like, I wanted to explore more and not commit myself to a full-time job. And so at that time, I had a good Twitter audience and got many requests for freelancing. And when you know that earning in a currency like dollars has a far better purchasing power compared to when you're earning in let's say
Who better than you know this?
in our currency. So I
Right.
wanted to explore this path, and it was a lot of risk when you're just a fresher out of college.
Yeah.
You rejected a full-time job and you want to go onto the freelancing path. So I took the
Yeah.
risk. I started building off on 2 clients, and then increasing that to three, because let's say if one of them does not pay, I still have the other two that can back me up.
Options
And
open for you.
so it was more of a diversification kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're diversifying, let's say when you're working on a full-time job, you're mostly working on a product in a couple of months, right? But when you're
Right.
freelancing for three different clients on three different projects in three different industries, so it's just the exposure that you get to different code bases, different people and different teams, and how the the lifestyle is working with them. That that was, I think, kind of enlightening in terms of how we work in India versus how they work in their country. So
Right.
working on after that, I also got into technical writing. So that's a whole topic that I don't want to discuss in this podcast because it's
I think we can have a separate episode for that.
it's mostly related to writing. But the summary of that is that I wrote many articles for many startups, and that also helped me. At one point in August 2021, I was working as a full-time technical writer, a freelance technical writer, and I did not do any
Okay.
iOS freelancing stuff. And by the end of December 2021, I took up a full-time job to work as an iOS developer relations engineer at Codemagic, and I will complete 5 months in a week.
Wow. Congratulations for that. I think
Thank
you've
you.
also, since we were talking about MusicKit, you've also released your book on the same, right? So why don't we talk about that? I thought that you would touch upon that, but you missed it.
Hmm.
So why don't we talk
So
about it?
thank you for. So I don't have to. Looks like I don't have to do self promotion myself. You brought that up. So I started. So it's mostly when you're working on something. It's like you're scratching your own itch. Like when you're working on Music Kit, there's serious lack of documentation, and as a lot of people are not using it, you won't find many
Yeah.
answers on Stack Overflow or the document. The developer forums. But uh, the Music Kit team has been very active on developer forums, so that gave me a, what do you say, a hope that okay, this team is unlike other teams at Apple, and that they
Mm-hmm.
answer your questions. And when I file a feedback, let's say I filed a few feedbacks in August last year, and they were like fixed by the next beta update, and that's the quickest beta update cycle that I have seen.
Okay.
And so I was working on an app called Musadora, and that app was just having your own personal Apple Music clone, so that you are
Mm-hmm.
very proud of just customizing the whole app to your own needs. And then
Okay.
while working on that, I was side by side working on a open source framework called as Musadora Kit. So what it does is
Okay.
that, as I mentioned before, Music Kit right now does not expose all the functionalities of Apple Music API. So I
Right.
wanted to create a companion framework for Music Kit.
Okay. Okay.
So this Musa kit is like, let's say, a bridge between your Apple Music API and Music Kit. So if you use this framework in your app, you get access to everything that Apple Music API has to offer. So
Okay.
when I and side by side, I was writing a lot of articles related to Music Kit. So I thought
So
of,
how
let's
does
say,
like this Musa? Sorry to interrupt you in between, but how does this Musadora kit helps you? Like you get all the things at your hand to play with, and you don't have to dig deeper into the documentation, the actual documentation. It's like that, or
yes,
am I
yes,
wrong with that?
it's well documented. So let's say you have to fetch a song from the Apple Music catalog, and you know the identifier for it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all you have to do is just say Musadora Kit dot catalog song parameter ID. That's it.
Okay.
So it's like simplifying to the level that you just have to write one liners in your app.
Will I be wrong to say that it's more of like LMFire, just like how LMFire helps us with URL session and just wraps up everything inside it?
It's like when Alamfire released, I think they had the same problem. I think it was AF networking kit or something like that
Yeah, there was
back in those
something like this.
times,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was very difficult to work with that. So that's how Alamfire came into the picture and got very popular because it made working with URLs and networking easier, and
Very
that's what
easy. Yeah.
my idea is, working with
Okay.
music kit
Nice.
easier.
Nice.
And I
I
wrote
definitely
many.
leave the link to your, though it is like very simple to search it, but I'll still leave a link to your Musadora kit in the description down below. Guys, you should definitely check that out. And yeah, let's continue. Yeah, Rudrank, back to you.
So when on side I was writing many articles related to MusicKit, and I realized that I'm the only one writing articles related to MusicKit. So when I go and see my analytics for my blog, all I get a good amount of traffic from Google. So I realized, okay,
Wow.
this is a good, what say, uh, area to
Niche.
explore, niche to
Yeah.
explore, because I already have many articles related to that. I have an open source framework for that. What if I combine both of them and write a book on this?
Wow. I think you're officially a music kit ambassador now, like unofficially. But
Music kit developer advocate.
yeah, in some way. Yeah, please go ahead.
So when I started writing the book, one thing, when you're writing a book at that, it is very difficult. I did not realize that it will be that difficult, because when you're writing an article for, like, let's say 2000 words or 3000
Mm-hmm.
words,
Mm-hmm.
you can manage that. But when you're working on a book that's like 25,000 words, and you're the only person who is doing the writing, the proofreading, the editing part, the final pass
Right.
editing, you're the team lead for that whole idea, it
Yeah.
gets difficult. And I knew that if I tried to make the book perfect, I would never be able to ship it. So
Mm-hmm.
what I did was, I put a discount of 75% and shipped a very
Okay.
basic version of the book to the readers. So if someone is interested, they will buy. So I got, I think, around 10 sales on the first day, and I was like, okay, if 10 people can buy, then there is substance in this book. Then I
Yeah.
gradually started sending updates, because it's an ebook, right? it's
Right.
um it's just a PDF that you have to download, and not a soft copy. So I can just send weekly or monthly updates for that book. And as I'm sending new updates, I'm increasing the price slowly, because that's how the worth of the book grows. But the people
Right.
who initially bought it for 75% discount are the luckiest, because they're getting
I'm one of them.
the thank you for buying my book as an early bird.
I think I believe in what you're doing, right? The way you have been playing with Music Kit, and you have given a lot of real examples through your work. That actually drives me to buy that. I think, to be honest, as a customer, I would say that the reason behind buying that book was this. I haven't explored that book yet, but I would definitely do it with all the conviction because you have actually put your work into it, and I have seen that happening. So, as a seller, I'm giving you this honest, like for you as a seller, I'm giving you this honest feedback. This works.
I think building in public works, because when you are showing what you have been working and the struggles that you go through as a developer or as a writer, on, like
Right.
recently I put out a tweet that I was working on the chapter Q. So
Mm-hmm.
Q is when you're setting the music player's queue, like the collection
Yeah.
of songs for that. So there is a class called Q. So it was bringing the memories of the interview that
Apple
I failed.
interview.
And it was kind of like how far I have come in my journey, failing from
Right.
not able to solve a basic Q question to
Mm-hmm.
writing a chapter on Q.
Book. Yeah. Awesome. What are your plans, Rudrank? Because sometimes I get, confused about what you're trying to do. You
Hmm.
know, as a person who is looking at what all you are doing on Twitter, I sometimes get confused by, looking at the kind of content that you put out. It gives me a messaging sometimes that maybe Rudrank is trying to build out his own identity in this space, and maybe he will expand further on that going forward. Uh, or is Rudrank looking into this developer advocacy space and want to expand in that? Or is it a mix of these two, and he'll try to maintain, these things side by side, and we'll go ahead with this? Maybe not even all of these options, and something else which you haven't done yet. So
So
what is
I
it?
think it is the mixture of both, getting into developer relations, and because currently I am enjoying my work. I have a great work-life balance that helps me work on my personal projects and my books. So
Yeah.
as you mentioned, it is a mixture of both that I'm trying to achieve, where I'm getting more better at developer advocacy and my job. in my 9 to 5, and
Yeah,
in my 5 to 9 I'm working on my books, and
5 to 9. Nice.
and trying to, what do you say, being an indie developer is very difficult, but I just
Right.
want to have valuable apps on the app store that helps other developers.
Yeah.
But writing is
Though,
something that I want to continue for a long, long time.
hmm. Like, let's ask one question regarding writing as well, since we haven't touched upon that. But I will not expand on that. Otherwise, we will, be talking for next 30 minutes again. So I'll not make it that long for the audience. But like, the question is, what kind of approach do you take when you write on a certain topic? What goes in your head? How do you formulate it or format it in the way that you put it out? So, what is your process with it?
So when I start out with the topic, the first idea is that I get into a mindset where I am a developer reading that article and what I want from that topic. Let's say, recently I wrote an article on migrating your project from
Hmm.
Intel machines to the Apple Silicon machines. So,
Okay.
as a developer, what do you want to read in this article? I would want someone to explain me how they can update the dependencies, what problems that I may face, and give me an example of an error that I may get, and what advantages do I get by, because it's a trade-off, because you're spending time getting your project to work on silicon, uh,
Right.
versus just running Xcode on on Rosetta emulator.
Hmm.
So this is so thinking from this mindset, I have already developed an outline for the article, and then
Okay.
this is a very rough outline that I've developed, and then I will go and expand on each of the main headings that I
Aspects.
pointed out. And this is my first step of creating a good outline. The second step is, if there's a sample project that I want, I will create it first, and so that I have a clear idea of what the sample project will be from start to finish, because
Yeah.
I may be, what you say, referencing the code from that sample project in the article. So the sample should be done beforehand, and then finally it's
Hmm.
about writing the article. I choose one topic at a time to work on, and sometimes, because sometimes you're researching a lot on a topic and it may take a day just to write a topic, and sometimes it will be like 15 minutes because you already have experienced what you're going to write about. So it's just putting your experience into words.
Nice.
And when I'm done, I do some keyword research and some part of the
Some
SEO.
SEO and everything. How do you go about searching and looking out for the topic that you want to write, or does that come from your experience only, just like what you said just now?
So this article was related to work, but otherwise, when I'm working on my own articles, I do not do keyword research or SEO for my own articles. It's just that,
Yeah.
let's say I am working on an app, and okay, I face some problems with tab view, and I wanted to
Yeah.
create a dynamic tab view. I search on Google for dynamic tab view. I do not get an answer, but somehow I managed to create a dynamic tab view. So now I have a topic that to write about, and I
Nice.
already have the sample code ready because I just implemented it, and the memory is still fresh, so I can just
Yeah.
jot everything down.
Nice. That's a nice way, I would say. All right. On that note, I think we can wrap up this episode here. And the last question that I wanted to ask you in this episode was that what kind of advice would you give to the not 18, because I think you're 22 around something, right?
I'm right now
So
24.
24. Okay, we are of same age. All right, not
I
one
dropped
year.
a year for, what do you say, for IIT preparation.
Okay, okay, okay. Now we are not same age though. I'm 25. So, all right. Coming back to the question that I was asking you. So again, I would say that what advice would you give to the 18-year-old version of Rudrank if you want to, whisper something in his ear?
I think if I have to go back and tell my 18-year-old self something, it will be just three words, and it will be, those words will be that: believe in yourself.
Wow.
Like, have no iota of doubt in yourself as a person, or just just what you're doing, try the best as you can, because if I have to look back on all the opportunities that I missed because I was doubting myself, the cost of those opportunities have been great, and I still think about what would have had been if I had been more confident in myself and taken those opportunities.
Hmm. Though I would say that that's part of how we evolve, right? It's not something
But
that comes to us from the very first day. We go through that kind of experience, then we learn and, apply it in our life. You were saying something,
I was saying that that's why I want my 18-year-old version to hear this, because
right?
he did not experience this.
Exactly. That's awesome. Any last advice for all the audience that we have? And, the audience is majorly iOS developers, I believe. So, any advice that you have for them?
I think as an iOS developer, you should enjoy the work that you are doing, and that's very cliched, but this is the part. If you are not enjoying what you're doing, and it just gets tougher in the long run. And like right now, really enjoying working on MusicKit, because when I'm working on the framework, I listen to many songs and explore many songs along the way.
Yeah.
Like, let's say I'm working on a chapter on a station, so I put on a new station, and I have loads of new music that I explored. So just enjoy
Nice.
something that you're doing.
And if somebody is not enjoying that, I would like additionally add that, you should just get rid of that and do something which you actually enjoy, right? Uh,
It's easier to say but then difficult to implement. If, say, let's say, because as an iOS developer you make shit tons of money. And
that's true. But I think there is, I think, a myth regarding iOS development only, because it's not just about iOS development; it's about any other field. With my friends, I see this happening. He's an Android developer, and when it comes to the money part, like we have almost the same kind of numbers over there. So yeah, I accept that. As you said, there is tons of money in iOS development. I believe the same about web development, Android development, or maybe some other development as well. Basically about the IT field, I believe it has a lot of potential in itself. And if you're not enjoying one certain thing, after giving 2-3 years maybe to that certain thing, then you can think of maybe choosing something else and trying out something else by side, and then you can make that switch or move, whatever you call it.
that's a good advice. Thanks for giving that to the audience.
Though nobody asked, but yes, that's a free advice. But yeah, on that note, Rudrang, I think it was really not just insightful but a productive discussion, I would say, for me in person. I think we still have missed out some points which I think we can cover up in the next episode, like the follow-up episode for this. If you agree to that, we can expand on those points because we know what we have missed in this one. But whatever we discussed today, I think that adds up a lot of value to this conversation that we had. And I believe the same is the reaction to the audience that is listening to it and watching it. So thank you so much for being my guest today. And yeah, over to you.
And once again, thank you for having me, Mayank. It was long planned to have this
Long
conversation.
plan, cancelled in between,
We were
rescheduled.
supposed to meet in person as well.
Yeah, I think that should also happen. uh, it's more of like our remote work kira that is coming in between. We have become a little lazy. You want me to come to Gurgaon, I want you to come to Delhi. So but yeah, I think we
That
will definitely figure out some way to meet finally. But yeah, it would be fun doing. No, maybe we can do the next episode in person. And yeah, that would be nice. So yes, thank you so much for the day, and guys, that's all for this episode. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and if you want to listen to more such productive and value-adding podcasts. Thank you so much once again. See you in the next one. Bye bye.